So I think we're connecting. Yes. Hey,
Hello,
good.
how are you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Renata.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
everybody
not
hear me?
yeah, maybe somebody can put in the comments if you can hear Renata.
If there's no problem, that's okay. We'll keep going.
Yes. All right. Well, I would like to thank Renata Munro. Oh, yeah, then you're saying yes. Yeah, good. Renata Munro, she's from Oliveira Translations. She's also lives in Brisbane, which is very handy for me. But nowadays, with emails, everything, it's much easier. And she's the translator that in the past several years I go to whenever I need a document to be translated. One, because she's very competent, and two, she's been doing a lot of translations of engineering documentation as well. So I certainly feel very confident to have my documents and to refer her to my audience as well. Thanks very much, Renata. And if you want to introduce better your qualifications and where you come from and how long have you been doing this, please?
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Well, the same way I've been doing some translation for Jason for a while, and it's really a nice collaboration. I love that. And every time I get someone that gets in touch with me, it came, and I see, oh yeah, I'm an engineer. I send it to him because I think the job you're doing, the work you're doing is marvelous. All
Thank
right,
you.
I've been a translator for over 10 years. I've lived in Australia. Well, I'm completing 25 years this year, so I've been
Wow.
here for a long time. I come from Minas Gerais, from Brazil. And yes, I love translating, and I love being part of, especially dealing with engineers and learning new skills and learning linguistically as well. And what I always say to people is, I can have all the linguistic experience I can, and I try and I do a lot of research, but I always work in collaboration as well with clients, with people that need translation, because it's a partnership. I find out from you good terminology, things that perhaps I didn't understand, and you, on the other hand, get your documents translated. They have to be NATI translated if they are going to a governmental organization here in Australia. So, so hopefully I'm your official translator to go to when you need
Yeah.
something. And I'm always here to help. Whenever, I'm like Jason, I enjoy helping people, and I try as much as I can. Sometimes if I don't know the answer, as Jesse was saying in one of his the webinar that I just finished watching, the second webinar, basically we don't know everything, but we know people. We work in collaboration with people. So I work with Jason. So every time there's an engineering question or a document, what do I need to translate? I always refer to Jason. It was good to see there's also Carlo Castriota from Bloom Translation, from Bloom Migration. So you can go and find out from people that really know specifics about your process to validation.
Yeah, and that's a very important point, Renata, because we can see that there's a lot of professionals in the market, and sometimes you see some not so good feedback about one or two, etc. I'm pretty sure that everybody tried to do their best, but sometimes the process of migration, the process of validation is so complex that if you have somebody that you have a track record of good results, and the people that you know their values, you know their principles, you know that they are there to help people as well. They're not there just to do a business. They are there to help people to make sure that they have a nice journey. That's the people that I like to refer to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So today I'm going to be asking you about the top 7 questions that usually engineers they have when they are translating documents. Sometimes people think, oh yeah, it's just a document translation, but it's much more than that. And a lot of people ask me questions, and as you mentioned, I refer always them to you because I know that you'll be able to help them. So I've got my cheat sheet here that we discussed before, and the first question is fairly straightforward. Is it necessary that my translation needs to be done by a NATI certified translator?
Well, in Australia, yes, because in Australia, if you want your documents, your translations recognized by the official authorities, meaning any government organization in any official capacity, it needs to be NATI certified. It needs to be a translator that is NATI certified. So basically, a lot of people sometimes they do have their documents translated by a sworn translator, what we call juramentado no Brasil, and the same I think apply to South America. And I'm not saying the translators in those countries are marvelous; they're very good, but Australia has regulations, and what happens is that sometimes I get a lot of clients, not only from engineering, but from other disciplines, and they say, well, I paid a lot of money and I had my documents translated in Brazil. I got here, they were translated by a sworn translator, and they weren't accepted. And the reason is because NATI is the regulatory body that certifies, that takes care of all the regulations regarding translators and interpreters in Australia. So it means that a government organization or, a professional board, they can verify that that person is competent to translate. And unfortunately, if a translation comes from another country, it's so much harder because they don't know the system of that country. So that's why I always say to people, if you need an official translator, an official translation of your documents, if you want your documents to be accepted in Australia, you will need to have a certified translator from NATI. And that's what I am, that's what the group of people that I work with are.
And the booklet is a bit, the migration skills assessment booklet from Engineers Australia is a bit confusing in that part. They say that the translation needs to be done by an authorized person with some details. And I keep saying to my audience that and translation in our countries of origin, they're not cheap as well. So I keep saying to them, if you're going to spend money in translating documents in your own country by a sworn translator, so you're going to spend the money anyway. So find authorized NATI translator here in Australia and get your documents translated here in Australia. Because and we know that the English here is slightly different from the English that people speak in Brazil and in other countries. So it's much better and a smoother process. All right. Yeah, thanks, Renata. The second question is, what's the difference between sworn translation, simple, and certified?
Well, I guess that's relating to the first question anyway. So in Brazil, you do, and I do apologize for the people that are not from Brazil. I don't have the expertise of all the Latin American countries. I know they also do have translators there, but each country, they do have their own systems, right? So in Brazil, I know that you have sworn translators that basically they are what we are. They are for Brazil what we are for Australia. All the official documentation is translated by a sworn translator in Brazil. All the official documentation is translated by a NATI certified translator in Australia. In Australia, we don't have, for your situation as engineers trying to validate your qualifications, a simple translation, what it is in Brazil is when you translate something for a private organization that doesn't that stamp. What the NATI certification and what the sworn translator, what they have is a stamp that tells the organization that's receiving that translation is that stamp that says that person has passed examinations, has done all the stuff they need to, and I can verify that that person is competent. It has been certified by that organization to translate. So a simple translation, sometimes people say to me, oh, can you do a simple translation? In Australia, it doesn't really work like that unless I'm doing a marketing material or a website where they don't need my stamp. But the difference is that you don't have one translator here. You have a sworn translator in Brazil. You have a certified translator here in Australia.
Here.
Yes, that's it.
Good.
That answer the question? Right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks, Renata. The other question is, when I translate a document, does that translation have an expiry date? How does it work with that?
That's a very good question, because the certified translators here in Australia, we get a stamp, and that stamp has a date, has an expiry date. The expiry date, and that's very easy for a lot of people. The expiry date for the translator, every 3 years, I have to recertify. And that's one way that NATI finds to, so we keep doing professional development, like you engineers. You have to do professional development. You know, you have to keep up with the advancements of the profession. So we also have to prove to NATI every 3 years that I've satisfied all the requirements you need for me to be an official translator. So that expiry date is for me. So if you, let's say you did a translation in 2017, and then it gets to 2022, and you're still in the process. So because some people, they do translation a long time ago, and then they are actually lodging the application 5 years later. Okay. So, and they go, oh, but my translation has expired. No, your translation has not been expired, because it was done by a certified translator at the time that it was that person that did your translation was certified. So that stamp, that expiry date is for the translator. Okay?
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, that's very good to know. Obviously, if you change your name, or if a situation with the document changes, then of course you gotta translate again an updated version of the document. Yeah.
Totally. And that happens a lot with people that they get married, they had a birth certificate. You know, in Brazil, you have a birth certificate, and every time you get married or you get divorced, it is actually, there's an amendment in the birth certificate. So then they get a new birth certificate that's different to the previous one that was translated. So you probably need to translate it again. Yeah.
But if you translated, let's say, your bachelor degree certificate and your academic transcript, because it's not going to change, that certificate is a certificate and the transcript is a transcript. So even if you translated 5 years ago, it's still current.
It's valid. Yep. And if the organization by anything, you can direct them to the NATI, the regulatory body for translator interpreters. So it's NAATI, and I can put that, and I can send out that information to Jason, and he can put it on the webinar or on his page. So you have ways of contacting me or contacting NATI to verify that someone actually was certified when that translation was done.
When that was done.
Sometimes, you know, organizations, even the immigration department, sometimes they have to be told this is what happens. Okay, because you have different people that take that translation and go, oh, but you know, it says here it expired in 2019. The translation does not expire.
All right. Okay. Thanks. The other question is an interesting question. Can I translate the document myself and then just ask the translator to sign it?
That question, that happens a lot, believe it or not, because I understand people, you know, translation is an expensive process. The same way that everything that if you want to validate your qualification, you do have to pay quite a lot of money. It's an investment for later on in the future that you can job. So people do feel that, oh, maybe if I translate and she just reads it and signs and stamps, maybe I can save her some time. I can tell you no, you can't, because ethically, I can't sign or stamp something that I didn't do. Okay, so.
Yeah.
And most of the time too is people they speak English, and I think a lot of people speak really good English, but writing in a translation translating is very different to just putting something together.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's actually more work for the translator having to
fix
go
something.
through, yeah, to fix and to revise it all, right? So, but I do appreciate when people say that, and I understand where they're coming from. But what I always say to people is, if you want to have a look, if you want to give it a go, that's fine. Translate. I really don't mind, and I think it's a wonderful exercise. But it's still going to cost you the same amount, because I do have to do it as if I did the whole work, because that's how the ethics of the profession is very important, and you can't stamp or sign something that it wasn't done by you. So
yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah,
not.
yeah. That's good, Renata. And that's interesting. Similar things are happening with, for example, the validation process. I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of messages and emails asking, "Hey, Gerson, I wrote my career episodes and summary statement and CPD, etc. I submitted and I got a negative feedback from Engineers Australia. Can you please review it for me?" And then I say, well, one, I don't provide individual consulting services, so I don't really do anyway. And two, once you've written and then there is a negative feedback already, it makes much more effort to trying to fix something that's already probably not very good. And what I think is that some people, they, as you said, maybe they're trying to save a few bucks here and there, etc. But then once the feedback comes back negative, they're willing to pay thousands to get it fixed. So
True.
it's much cheaper. It's much cheaper to maybe engage a professional service right in the beginning. In your case, a native translator. And in my case, perhaps follow my videos or join my mentoring, and then get it done right in the first time, rather than later on having to pay even more money to get things fixed. Yeah,
I totally agree.
That's good, Renata.
And a lot of times I say to people, I try to be very fair, and I work with a group of, I work in collaboration with 3 other NATI certified translators, and we all very fair. And usually I say to people, if you have problems with payments, and I know now with the pandemic it's even harder, I'm more than happy to. You can pay installments, we can divide the payments, we can, I'm not here to make your life harder. I'm here to try to help you, and we can work together to get to a point. Like, I can't say, well, I'll do this for free, but I certainly, share the payments where you pay every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or whatever happens that you need to do, just to make sure that you get a good outcome out of it. Because you need your documents translated. There's no other way around it.
No, there's no.
And and as you said, it's better to go and do it properly the first time, where you invest the money and you can probably divide the payments in installments, than to do something in the wrong way in the first time. You pay a little bit less, but then you have to do it again. So
yes.
I agree.
All right. The 5th question is, what's the difference between extract translation and a full translation?
That's a very good question too, because the immigration department in Australia, they do accept a lot of extract translations. So extract translations is when you extract the relevant information from that piece of paper, and you are saying to the authority that's receiving that translation that I've extracted from this full document all relevant information, right? Some organizations, for example, the immigration department, will accept an extract translation. A full translation is when you translate everything. You translate every single little stamp that's in there. You have to say it. This is a stamp saying this is a certified copy, even if in Portuguese, right? So the difference is, for example, with academic transcripts, most of the time, universities, and I would say that's probably the same for Engineers Australia, they want the full transcript. They want to know how many hours you studied, what was the grades you got. So for that, for a certificate and for a transcript, you probably need a full translation. But again, for Engineers Australia, a lot of times I was listening to Carlo Castriota from Bloom Migration, and he was saying some of the requirements for the visas are, you have to provide evidence that you got paid by that company that you're saying you had a position with that company, you worked as an engineer from that company, and they need evidence that you actually receive a salary for the work you've done, the work you did with that company. I think I froze there, but
you did a little bit, but we still can hear you. Yeah. We can't hear you now. No. You got muted. So what I'll do, I'll disconnect and I'll connect again. Her, and then I will ask her, I will connect her again. Sorry guys, too many people working from home probably. So we're reconnecting, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can now, yeah.
Okay, I can hear you now. Okay.
Yeah. It's a little bit delayed. Yeah.
So, yeah, is it better now?
It's still a bit delayed, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so basically what I was saying is that for some documents, extract translation, which means it's the relevant information, is okay. So, for example, I know that I've done for a lot of engineers the pay slips and their tax returns. I've done basically an extract translation, which means you can actually, like, sometimes people have pay slips for 10 years, right? So you can actually do an extract translation where you basically put everything in 1 or 2 pages. And then you can say, okay, in 2002, this person earned this much in these months. And so you basically just put all the relevant information, their position, their employer, how much they got, what's their base salary, and all of that. So that's an extract translation. Right. And it's sometimes much cheaper than a full translation. But I always say to people, you need to check with the organization you are sending this translation to, that they accept extract translation. Mm-hmm. And really the responsibility is on the client to contact Immigration or Engineers Australia or, I know universities, if you're doing a course to be able to get into the skill assessment, the universities do not accept extract translation. So it has to be a full translation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'm just typing in Engineers Australia email, engineersaustralia.org.au. So, yeah, the engineers can send an email to them. And they're really good. Engineers Australia is really good in responding emails. So it's member services at engineersaustralia.org.au. If you have that question, you can send an email to Engineers Australia and they will reply very promptly. Well, now with this COVID, I don't know how are their level of staff, but they probably still have a skeleton staff. All right.
Sorry, Jason, I think your advice is very good too. People, don't be afraid of asking. Contact the engineers, send an email saying, can I translations? Can I? So then at least you know what to do, and at least you know that you've spoken to someone that gave you the green light to say, yep, I can do extract translations. And that is a much cheaper way if you need to, when you have a lot of documents together.
Yeah, thanks, Renata.
So don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, thanks, Renata. I'll just resend the email because there was missing one S in Australia. All right, so disregard the first email address, and the second one is the right one. All right, the sixth question is, what are the documents that I need to translate?
Yes, so that is a very good question too, and I will refer back to you and to your second webinar, where I'm an expert in translating, right? But when people say to me, what do I need to translate for Engineers Australia? Well, that's why you're participating in these webinars, because Jason is here to give you, that's the requirements. The translator translates a lot of stuff for a lot of different people. So if I had to know every single organization, what they require, I would be an encyclopedia, I guess. So usually what I say to people is, I can give you an idea of what other engineers have asked me to translate, but ultimately you need to do Jason's workshops, and then you find out what are the requirements. Go into the website. The Engineers Australia has the booklet of what do you need, and contact people. It's again your responsibility to tell me these are the things, because I'm not, or get in touch with the migration agents. They are brilliant because they know this is what you need. They are involved in those skill migrations. They know the process. So I always tell people, if you don't have a migration agent with you, and I think now you've had the webinar with Carlo, and there's so many people out there that can help you. And again, as we were saying before, it is expensive. It's an investment, but it's an investment that you're going to do, and you're going to have your process done in the correct way.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you from every single translation and every single discipline that I translate exactly what are the requirements. You need to tell me which documents you need to translate. Yeah. And I think most of the time I always refer people. I refer to Jason for the validation, because that's what you need. I refer to migration agents that can help you to navigate this process. So it's important to know that each person has their expertise, and I would hate to give advice that I don't know, really.
Yes. No, yeah, that's great, Renata, and you're 100% correct. The Migration Skills Assessment booklet from Engineers Australia has every single document that you need to translate in terms of academic certificates, your identification, your change of name documents, transcripts. There are some questions about, for example, for the Brazilian engineers, ART, the Anotação de Responsabilidade Técnica. Sometimes, if it is linked to your career episodes, it is a good idea to translate that 1 or 2 pages. So if it is linked to the career episode. But if you have, let's say, 20 of those ARTs, but you just write in your career episodes and just using 3 of them, so certainly you don't need to translate all 20. You can just translate the 3 that you are referring to in your career episodes.
That's very good, Jason, because I actually translate a lot of them, and I realize it's really nice to know that's how
Yeah.
That's how it works. If they are, you have to translate them if they relate to your career. So I think that's why your workshop is so important, because people then know exactly the process. And it's like Australia is a very good country in terms of, if you follow the criteria, if you follow what they tell you, there is a much better chance of succeeding.
Yes.
So, you follow, they tell you, these are the criteria. When you need to do your career episodes, they need to be 1,000 words each. They need to reflect this and this and this. You follow that. And if you follow that, you will, there's a much better chance.
Yes.
And it's exactly the same thing. Like if you, for translation, you unfortunately, you do have, if your documents are in a different language,
they have to be translated.
They have to be translated because, Australia is English. So if your document is not in English, they'll have to be translated into English. So it can be read by Engineers Australia. So, and that goes for every language that's not English, right? And
one characteristic that I like from your service, Renata, is that you're very neat and tidy with your translation documents. So the original version is always together with the translation. Your identification as a translator, all your contact details, everything is very neat and tidy. So when I get a translated document, I don't need to even be concerned about having to attach the original document in the original language, because it's already there. So it's very easy and very, so.
I do that because, and I've always done that because I always feel that if you, like, I always put myself in their shoes. If I was getting a document from a Russian document, let's say I work for Engineers Australia or I work for immigration, I get a Russian document. If I don't know what the translation relates to, I'm just trust that someone is doing the right thing. So I just try to make it easier. I want to make sure that, you're already going process. It's already very daunting. Let's make it easier that the person receiving that see that is, okay, this is a transcript and it relates to this. This is what it means. So, I'm glad you said that. Yes. I'm glad you're happy with that.
I'm very happy. All right, so we've got the last question. And just before we go into the last question, after the last question, certainly I'm going to thank Renata for her participation. And I'm going to choose somebody from the audience that is live here. And I will invite to be like Renata is right now, live with me. And that lucky person will be having a free 15 minutes consulting service with me live, where you can expose your case if you want to. Well, that's the deal. You expose your case and then I'll give you the 15 minutes consultation free. Important for that is that as part of this community that we're trying to build, your question can be the question of somebody else. So we've got 15 people live here. Let's say that 10 people, they want to participate. I will choose one. So the other 9, don't be upset. Don't turn off. The question of the person can be your question as well. So I believe that you can request to be live. So you can actually request from now. And then once I switch off Renata, I'll be able to choose those ones that have requested. And I think I've got already 1 or 2. Yeah, be fast. Yeah. So the last question is, what about the amount of money to be spent on translation? Why does it cost that much?
Well, because it's not that we try to be as fair as possible, right? But with translations, as I said before, you every 3 years you revalidate, you recertify. So with that, there's all my time of doing a lot of professional development, paying for it, and you're paying for quality, and you're also paying for the fact that your translations are done by a certified official translator. And it's a lot of time, believe it or not, I try to be as fair, as I said, as possible. And a lot of times I do a lot of research because I want to make sure that the translations are of, the best quality I can give. So I spend a lot of time researching all the terminology. I spend a lot of time contacting you if I can't understand something, because as I said, it's also a partnership. So the price is because it's a service, and it's done with quality. And as I said, very few people that I know charge, exorbitant amounts. A lot of people charge very fairly for a job that is done by a professional, like an engineer. If you are a civil engineer and you're working as a civil engineer, what you charge for your hour is equivalent to your expertise, to your qualifications, and it's the same. Translators are qualified. I had to sit an exam to become a translator, and I had to constantly be learning and investing in my own profession. Sorry, my dog.
That's what happens when we are live.
Investing in my own profession to make sure that it is a quality, what I deliver is a quality service. So I try to think that hopefully it's not that expensive. Hope the good investment that will take you across the line, and it's a service that is required by the Australian government, that if you want translations done, it's to be done by a qualified, certified translator. But as I said, I always try to be as fair as I can, and I always, I'm always open to saying, let's divide the payment so you can pay and I can do my job with the quality that I like it done.
All right. Okay. I'll just share with the comments your profile in Instagram. I believe it's at Oliveira Translations. So if people, people want to have contact with Renata, send her a direct message. I tell everybody, I refer Renata. I don't get any commissions for that, just because I really trust what Renata does. And I would like you guys to always be in touch with the best professionals that we know of. And certainly there is your group of the Nazi translators, which I believe somebody is very busy. You always can rely on somebody else that is also with the same competency, which is really, really good. Yeah.
That's it. It's a collaboration between four of us. We are 4 translators, Nazi certified translators for Portuguese to English. And yes, we work collaboratively. So don't be afraid. If you send me something and I can't do it because I'm too busy, I always recommend one of them, because I know, I trust their work. They are amazing women, and we both help each other. I think I just froze again.
Yeah, but we still can hear you. One question that was asked 2 days ago, Renata, was about if you do translation from Spanish to English. Yeah, we're losing you. So I'm just going to disconnect and connect again, and then we can just ask this. Yes.
Okay.
I think yes. I can hear. We can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for.
We'll connect again, and hopefully we'll be lucky this time. We'll try last time.
Okay. Anyway, I know that there's people waiting to be able to
Yeah.
talk to you. So, if needs any, if they have any other questions, put it on Instagram or even my email, Renata at oliveiratranslations.com.au. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
So I'll just put in here Renata at Oliveira Translations.com.au. Oliveira Translations.com.au. Yeah.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. And
Yeah,
best of luck to the audience.
There was one question in the last 2 webinars before. What about translation from Spanish to English? Do you do this?
No, I don't. And the reason I don't is I know a lot of Latin Americans, they think, oh, well, you know, she's Brazilian, they understand Spanish. We do, but I'm not certified to translate from Spanish to English. So I can only translate what I'm certified for. So, but again, I do know a lot of very good NATI certified Spanish translators, and I'll be happy if you send me a question about it. I'll be happy to recommend someone. That's for sure.
No,
and
that's
it's the
very
same
good,
with the link.
Renata.
I'm happy to try to get you in touch with someone that I know.
No, that's great, Renata. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, Renata, in this Sunday. I know that Sunday, time to spend with family, etc. But thank you very much for your time and your attention and your cooperation, and much more than that, the information that you provided to us.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for inviting me. And
that's okay.
best of luck. I'll be watching the webinars. I watch every night, so I'm learning a lot too.
All right, then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. So I'll go so you can have someone else.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. See you, Jason.
See you. That's great. Yeah, Renata, she's a very competent professional and a very nice person indeed.